Welcome to AI and Critical Literacy, Enhancing Critical Thinking in the Classroom, Part 1, Strategies and Frameworks. My name is Judi Kibelstis with the LRC-South at Rowan University. The LRC-South is part of the LRC Network, a project of the New Jersey Department of Education, Office of Special Education. Today, we're going to discuss the importance of critical literacy skills in an AI-infused world. We're also going to explore some skills and frameworks that can support both teachers and students with AI integration in both the classroom and their daily lives. Before we dive into AI as a whole, let's talk about the three types of AI that we generally experience in our day-to-day lives. The first one is reactive. This is a tool that responds to something that we specifically tell it to do. Think of your Alexa or setting a reminder, things of that nature. We have predictive. This is AI that kind of looks at what we did and gives us suggestions for things that we think we're going to like. So your Netflix, you might like kind of suggestions. Your Amazon cart, hey, we saved this for you. I thought you might like this. And then finally, what we have is the type of AI that's really taking the world as we know it by storm, and that is generative AI. And this is a tool that can take something and create something new out of it. And it's based on language model and patterns of language, and it creates something that's completely unique to that particular prompt. That's really what we're going to talk about today. And the reason we need to talk about it is because AI is really a big deal. And it's a big deal because it's what we call a general purpose technology. So a general purpose technology is very flexible, it's interdisciplinary, and it can combine many different fields. So think of mathematics, cognitive sciences, computing, statistics, all of this is coming together. And it's a technology that is so powerful, it can actually disrupt the economy and change the way we do business because of how many fields and processes it goes across. So there's other things in our world, if you will, that have been this general purpose technology that has really shifted the game for everyone. Those include steam power, so think of locomotive engines, electricity, computers, and the internet. These were all general purpose technologies that could be used across multiple platforms by multiple people and really changed our day-to-day lives. And that's what we're looking at when we talk about AI today. Now, when we talk about AI, we really do have to start talking about its limitations and concerns. So basically, we talked about this in our first video. We're going to touch on this very quickly. AI doesn't really understand bias. So it's going to work on what it was trained by. It's trained by humans who have this kind of innate type of bias. It's what they know versus what they don't know, what they project on things based on stereotypes. So that kind of finds its way into code. If the AI isn't trained on certain cultural, specifications, or if it's not trained to realize how people with disabilities might interact with it, it's not going to be able to predict that well. And there's going to be some bias in there. It's going to lean away from certain things. It's getting better, but again, it was trained by people, so it's still not perfect. AI is based on information, not on facts. And that brings us into the bigger concern, that's the accuracy. So AI is generative AI, chatbots, things like that are open sourced. And it really gives us the opportunity to kind of get all of this information, which is great, but it can't tell the difference between a peer-reviewed journal, a work of fiction, or something someone just makes up, or propaganda, or conspiracy theories. It's taking all of that and leveling it the same way. So there's really no critical analysis of the information. There's nothing telling us that this is true, this is not. It's taking it all together and spitting it all out. So that's up to us to have the skills to filter out what is true and what is not. Obviously, we end up with things like deepfakes that are extremely difficult to find. We're going to talk about a few skills for that. Also, fraud and abuse are rampant with AI. There's ethical concerns about that we're going to talk about in a second. And the idea of hallucinations, where it just makes up its own facts, still an outright problem when we talk about chatbots and LLMs. Ethics and privacy are a huge concern with AI. We're not even going to get into the environmental aspects of that, but with us and our students, we're going to talk about data security. We're going to talk about teaching our students about copyright and what to do with material that other people have produced. We have the question of academic integrity and cheating. We also have to make sure that we're not going to deepen the digital divide by, expanding upon this, and that way, the haves and the have-nots become further and further apart. And finally, we also want to make sure that our students are not becoming dependent on AI. We want to make sure that they understand that this is a thing. This is not something that should be kind of the be-all and end-all of what they do every day. And one of the things that's coming up increasingly when we talk about AI and students is this unhealthy relationship that students are forming, actually individuals, adults are forming with AI. And this is the idea of anthropomorphism, attributing these human characteristics as something that's not human. We have to constantly go back as teachers and as parents and remind our students that AI is a thing. We might name it, we might talk to it. I mean, I'm even bad at this. I say thank you to my Alexa when it does something for me. Could you please tell me this? It is a thing, but I'm speaking to it like a human. So, we have to kind of put that into our students, the forefront of their minds, that these AI models are trained to be conversational, but there's not a person on the other end of that. And some of the materials that are coming out, some of the AI wearable technology that's coming about, some of the interaction with AI technology really can create some dangerous psychological connections for our students. We really need to focus on that social and emotional learning. If we step back, 15 years, had we known what kind of influence social media would have on our students, we would have all approached it in a very different way. So we need to take that lesson learned and put it here with AI and let our students know that this is a thing. This is not, something that you should be depending on. This is not your friend. This is not, a person that you can be with in any way, shape, or form. So we really need to build in that delineation with our students. Unfortunately, things like chatbots, avatars, and now personal AI devices are coming out. They're very popular and they're very inexpensive. There are now things that our students can wear that interact with them like a friend would. And it's a scary kind of situation. There was a situation where a student actually committed suicide, unfortunately, because of this idea of this AI connection, and he wanted to be with his girlfriend in the other realm. So we really, really, really need to, as parents and as teachers, drive home this idea that AI is a thing. And it's especially important right now because today's students are Generation Alpha. They have literally been engaging with technology their entire lives. They've had a tablet or a phone in their hands, since they could hold it. And it's really how they interact, engage, and learn. So it's kind of us as the adults who need to really adjust this and teach our students where they are. What's really difficult when it comes to AI is that they're fearless. They have tools and software, but they've never been taught the skills that they need to interact with technology safely. And that's generally because as teachers, we teach the skill and then we get to go back and apply it to practical use. But with technology, they're given the tool first before those skills are ever introduced. They have a tablet or they have a phone or they're playing a game, and we see toddlers doing this. So we really have to take that deliberate step to teach our students how to understand and effectively use some of these technology tools. And as I mentioned, the problem is we generally teach the skill and then apply it to practical use. We teach the ABCs before we ask them to read. We teach, our teenagers the rules of the road before we let them get behind the wheel of a car. But with technology, that structure really gets reversed. And the skill building is often skipped. And this generation is so confident with technology that they don't really understand or recognize the need to go back and revisit that skill building in those steps, which is why, digital literacy, critical thinking is so important to them. We really need to move into this with them because media literacy has become a critical literacy. When we're talking about our students, we're talking about Generation Alpha. They really need to learn how to safely and ethically use technology, including AI. They need to understand that AI is going to reshape the world that we're in, and it's in a way that we're just beginning to understand. But they also need to embrace that critical literacy and understand that that is a foundational skill that they need to engage with this technology so they can build success in the future. They cannot, just rely on whatever comes out of it as fact. They really need to build these skills to dig deeper. And that's where critical literacy really comes in. Critical literacy is the ability to identify purposes, motives, and potential biases to enhance overall comprehension and critical thinking. It's bigger than digital literacy. It's bigger than media literacy, whatever it is. It has become critical. We really need to teach our students to uncover the messages and meanings that they get, on, technology, through social media, through society, and look at it and analyze it with a critical lens. And that's going to prepare them better for this global, complex world that they are going to be part of. With Generation Alpha, the shift really is critical. And all of us need to understand and model this for our students. It's really hard. We can't just talk about it. We really need to model this. And all of us are probably bad. I'm speaking on this, and I should be better at it. So it's really a deliberate step that we all need to take. When we talk about the need for critical literacy, it is really an absolute need. It is exceedingly important, especially as AI is changing this world that we know, and it is, everything is adapting and changing so rapidly. In a Stanford study, researchers found that 80% of students, and these were high school students, believed that sponsored content was a real news story. They didn't understand that this was paid advertising. Most of them accepted photographs and images as they saw them. They didn't try to verify them. This is a big deal when we're talking about deep fakes. They didn't understand bias or agenda in the writing that they were reading. They weren't seeing that people write this to be, for a purpose, if you will. That these news stories or articles that they're reading, they don't recognize the agenda behind it. And this allows misinformation to really be passed along without even any thought. And most of them cannot identify the reliability of a source. This is all really important for everyone to understand. We can't blame our youth for not understanding this if we've never taught them otherwise. If we're giving them a phone or a computer or a tablet at 2, we have to give them the skills to critically analyze what they're seeing on that. Online environments are just going to continue to increase, and this is the life that we all live. And the everyday use of AI is only going to really compound these statistics. And it really shows us that we really need to take active, deliberate steps to look at information with a critical lens and to question where this information is coming from before we just immediately accept what we see as fact. So when we talk about skills that we need to assess all media, it's really important with AI because AI can be manipulated so quickly and so easily to give you that kind of just that fake assurance that things are okay. So we really need to harp on lateral reading skills, finding the same information from multiple sources, and then recognizing which of those sources is really reputable. If we're reading something that's confirming a story that we read on a website or a blog that's trying to sell us something, is something else trying to sell us this? Are they doing this for a particular agenda? Is there a specific motivation behind it? We need to understand why is this being put out there. And we need to be able to find ways to find that content in more reliable and reputable ways. And that's big on, we need to think critically. And it is one of those skills that we can't just keep it in the back of our head and, we'll think about it now and then when we're doing this or that. It really needs to be something that we ingrain in every day of our life. Because as technology is increasingly embedded into our lives, there is this ever-increasing need to integrate and reinforce these critical literacy skills as much as possible. And AI really, really makes it that this is a crucial skill that is going to let us be a successful part of this global digital world that we're all now living in. So when it comes to critical literacy, the Learner Variability Navigator put out these 3 main things that we should be looking at. And the first is the analysis of multiple sources. So we're being exposed to varied sources with multiple viewpoints. It can't just be what the algorithms are feeding us based on our likes or our interactions. We really have to go out of our way to look for other points of view. And then be able to analyze, evaluate, and question all of those different points of view to really get a deeper understanding of what's going on. They also emphasize continuous inquiry, to constantly be questioning what we're seeing, looking for biases, looking for underlying meanings, looking for that motivation, that power structure that may be embedded in why we're seeing this. Why is it coming out this way? And then finally, the idea of reflection, to really help students reflect and dig deeper into the meaning of what they're seeing and building that metacognition and really kind of reflecting and diving deeper and, being aware and controlling your own thought process in regard to that. These are key skills that everyone needs to be doing. And this is not just an individual teacher's job. This is every teacher's job. This is every parent's job. We need to do this not only for our children, but for ourselves as well. And when we look at this a little bit deeper, you're going to see that analysis of multiple sources, we're talking about our lateral reading skills. Continuous inquiry, we're talking about questioning the motivation of finding those reputable sources. And then finally, we're going to talk about thinking critically. And again, these are key skills, and they align with really how we need to look at things and what we need to do to assess the information that we're given to us. And it's not perfect, but it is a huge start. And if we start working on this now, as AI information and images become, more refined and more difficult to recognize, we're at least going to have some built-in defense system that can help guide us towards finding that real information. So ISTE is the International Society for Technology and Education. And as part of their standards, they call upon all of us to inspire students to positively contribute and responsibly participate in the digital world. They also call on us to establish a learning culture that promotes curiosity and critical examination of online resources and fosters digital literacy and media fluency. This is in 2016 that these standards for students came out, and this is increasingly important as we move into this AI-infused world. This is bigger than the internet. This is a big deal. Digital Promise has also come up with an AI literacy framework that's really valuable to take a look at and see how we can put this into practice in our classrooms. It says that AI literacy includes the knowledge and skills that enable humans to critically understand, use, and evaluate AI systems and tools to safely and ethically participate in an increasingly digital world. This is a really big deal. This is looking at kind of how are we preparing our students to become these global citizens of this digital world. So a really good framework to take a look at. And also New Jersey itself is coming up with information literacy standards. So this was signed into law by Governor Murphy in 2023. And basically the legislation directs the Department of Education to develop standards on media literacy. And this will be literacy across all fields. So this is like by developing literacy that students can really have a better understanding of how systems like AI work, what kind of data are being collected, and how they use that information to really influence behavior. And these skills allow students to actively and critically engage with the technologies rather than just passively consuming the information that's given to them. So it's really kind of trying to teach them to be an active participant, and that should be coming into school districts in the near future. Finally, when we talk about the need for these critical literacy skills, we also need to include students with disabilities in the process. We want to ensure that we're not deepening a gap in digital skills, often called the disability-digital divide. This refers to the difference in access to computers and the internet between those with disabilities and without, but it also considers how the disability itself can affect a person's ability to see, hear, or manipulate a given technology device. For example, when students who are unable to read text on a screen due to a vision impairment or unable to hear audio due to hearing loss, maybe we have students who are unable to use the functions that require clicking something on a keyboard or using a mouse or a button because of limited dexterity. So we really want to make sure that we're aware of students with disabilities when we're talking about this process. Additionally, many students with disabilities may also be impacted due to limited opportunities, and this is both in education and career opportunities. And these are opportunities, or these limited opportunities, can result from the disability itself. So we need to make sure that we cannot, intentionally or unintentionally deepen this divide, and we need to make sure that these critical literacy skills are presented and taught to all students, including those with disabilities, because all of our students are moving into this digital world. So this is going to be important for everyone. Additionally, when it comes to students with disabilities, there have been some studies that have found that disabled students are a little bit more likely than those without a disability to believe that digital skills are important And some of this suggests that educators can focus on empowering the students' use of technology because they recognize what's called this digital agility of disabled students. And that agility is the familiarity, the flexibility, and sometimes even just the confidence that comes along with using digital tools to help make decisions. Students with disabilities know that with the right supports and the ability to overcome some of these accessibility and technology related barriers, that they can learn increasingly in general education with their peers, and they want to learn these critical literacy skills in a learning environment that works and supports their needs. So one of the things we need to remember is to explicitly delineate the difference between like a general technology tool that students with disabilities can use to, guide and support, and the interactive or amorphic qualities of AI. So just be aware of that with students with disabilities. Technology tools, they're much more accepting in many ways because they're used to using these technology tools as a support, but we really need to delineate that difference a little bit more. One of the most important things that we need to remember is that any technology tool should help us teach how to think, not what to think. So that critical thinking really means arriving at your own, carefully considered conclusions instead of taking information that's presented to you passively at face value. So it's really important for us as educators and as parents to model effective critical literacy skills every day. Can we spot a fake image or video? Do we understand the purpose or motivation for information that we see, or even worse, information that is presented to us based on algorithms or other information about us? So we really need to think about how that medium, that purpose, that audience is cultivated. What are you doing? How are you sharing this information? Why is it being shared? That's more of the purpose. Who do you want to see it? Who's the audience? And most importantly, when we're talking about critical thinking, we really need to ask, is this the information you were looking for, or was it provided for you by someone or something else, whether it's algorithms, a computer, AI? We have to really consider the source and the reputable information that is presenting to us. We really need to refer back to these critical literacy skills whenever we're getting that content, that information. And, we need our students and ourselves need to have the skills to analyze, evaluate, and synthesize that information. We need to form judgments that are well reasoned. We need to make decisions and conclusions based on critical evaluation. We need to reflect on the success of what we're doing and if we're getting the information that we need or the results that we want, and then think critically about how to improve upon them. And these are skills that will always separate humans from AI. The complexity of our cognitive skills, our uniqueness, our creativity, we have empathy, we have intuition. So we really need to prioritize that critical literacy in education to empower our students as they move through this technology-driven world. So we can start developing critical literacy skills as early as tomorrow. And some of these are just very simple activities that can be used in any classroom with almost any age level. One of the easiest things you can do tomorrow is spot the bot. So it's an activity I've done with certain students, and you can do this. You can write a sentence and then ask AI to write a sentence on the same topic. Make your students compare and contrast the two. Which one do they think was written by the bot? You can put the same sentence into two different bots, chat bots, and have them analyze which one is better. AI is never going to misspell a word. Spell check is a great thing. It's never going to misspell a word, but it might get those facts wrong. It might be hallucinating. It's not going to have expression and attention to detail that humans sometimes put into things. There's not going to be any personalization. So have students start critically examining simple information, basic information, so we can evaluate and really start to delineate between AI and human actions. And again, we can compare outputs, we can look for biases, we can fact check the information that we've gotten from an AI chatbot using reliable sources that we know that we can depend on. We can start building prompt engineering skills, and this is a really great way to really focus in on attention to detail. The more refined the prompt is, the better the response from AI will be. So have your students start practicing that, really being specific in details. And then one of the other things we can do tomorrow is simply grade the AI. Instead of having your students write an essay, put the prompt into AI maybe a couple different chatbot generators, and then have the students grade the output based on the rubric. That's going to get them thinking about, what is matching what they're looking for, how are sentence structures together, is the fact correct, is it not? Another simple thing that you can do is guess the prompt. Here's 3 pictures. Can you guess what prompt I put in to AI? Because it's the same prompt across three very different pictures. Another thing you can do is put one of your own pictures in with this and ask them to guess which one is, not AI generated, which is the real picture, which is not. And just so you know, the prompt on this was a sad puppy with an empty food bowl. So, I mean, you can use anything you want, but we can look now at these prompts. How do we know it's AI generated? Well, the one on the left from Canva, it's a little blurry in spots. There's a weird green marker in the bowl because AI sometimes has trouble with reflections in AI generation tools. The middle one, if I knew what the prompt was, first off, there's food in the bowl, so it's not an empty bowl. But if you also notice that Free Pick AI, the poor dog has 3 legs, 3 front legs. So that's a little discerning. And then the final one is a great little picture of a puppy, but the bowl seems to either be floating or the dog has actually picked it up like he has opposable thumbs. So there's certain things when we're looking at things that we can kind of start guessing this might be AI generated using those critical literacy skills. And we're going to talk more about that in our next video. So I hope you have all enjoyed this. I hope you've gotten some information that you can use. Please feel free to use the LRC website to find some additional information. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the next video. The Learning Resource Center Network provides support, services, and professional development to educators and families of students with disabilities. There are 4 locations across New Jersey.